the triple micro strategy play. So a few days ago I came across a video about passive income dividend portfolio management, and I ran it through Google Gemini because I'm just like, oh, what kind of portfolio manager can Gemini be? Now I'll have a video on that later that is more reasonable for how to utilize AI for retirement planning, which not financial advice but just good brainstorming, food for thought. So it went from having this portfolio where it's like, oh, in 18 to 22 years you get to have your 1.2 million modest growth dividend aristocrats, and then you go down to REITs, and then you go into different yield harvesting assets. So on the higher speculation ones, the selling options and stuff is like, oh, in 8 to 12 years, your portfolio could pay $5,000 a month. I'm like, okay, let's speed this up a notch here. As a Bitcoiner, I'm like, what if we were to have a portfolio of MSTR, MicroStrategy, MSTY, and STRC? So doing a 50, 33, and 17% split, I'm like, how would this work out? Now, depending on what you invest, I use $25,000 as a nice round number, and then investing dollar cost averaging into it, say $2,500 a month. And the results were pretty outrageous. So just for those numbers, those are what we're going to use for this video. So with that, out of the 25,000, you'd put about 15,000 into, should be about 12.5 into MSTR, the 33% into MSTY, which pays a dividend, which about with selling options, it's yield max. It was paying up to a $20 a month dividend. Now it pays weekly, and each dividend is about 30 cents. And then STRC is the new MicroStrategy product, in which they have that Michael Saylor pulls out of to buy more Bitcoin. Now the theory with this was also that Bitcoin is going to go to $500,000 in 2029 in the next 4-year cycle. Although it is debatable what the 4-year cycle is, I still believe that it is in play with halving and everything that goes on with that. And with Michael Saylor, the ETFs, and everybody buying Bitcoin, the supply shock should become more substantial with Clarity Act and Genius Act through the regulatory framework is all aligned for this bull run. Now if we go to the charts here, or just the screen, MSTY has, here's the dividend since 2024 when it initially came out. So this was in the midst of the bull run, where it's paying $20 and $12.15, and as it fluctuates. So here was the first top in April, and then here's this. Actually, take that back. These weren't tops. October 2025 was the top, and then you see how it paid. Started going to weekly dividends, and then it also had a stock split. Then each one $5, and it all depends on how MicroStrategy is doing. And we can come over here to see what was going on in April 2024. It just had a massive run up, like 300% in almost 60 days. So crazy times right there. And then you can see from September to November was another 350% run up. So let's take a look around November. Yeah, it was paying $22 a month on dividends, which is crazy, because if you were to stack this now, hypothetically, I don't know if it'll overpay this again. Even if it were to pay weekly, this would be almost $5 a week at $25 in the current share, which currently the price seems to mimic MicroStrategy. So to where we had our top, early on, so this is generally where Bitcoin hit 100,000, and then we had our second top generally around October. So the big thing with MicroStrategy is that it has that native asset value, NAV, and that's one of the bigger issues we have with the stocks going up and down and not really holding the value of Bitcoin, but it does hold a beta of 3 as a multiplier. So let's take a look at STRC, which is a newer product. So the idea of this stock is that it will hold at $100, almost like a bond, a par value, and pay the $11.50 annually. So that's about, as it is, 95 cents a share. The record date of the 15th and the payout at the end of the month, which reliable income. So with this strategy, if you want explain to me like I'm 5, which Jim and I was able to provide an infographic. So you have your magic growing brick, which is MSTR, and that is your high growth, and it says it could grow to be a whole house in 3 years, and that's the time frame. 3.5 years is the time frame of this. So that is your core foundation of this investment, and then you go to your golden goose, which is MSTY, which, as it says, it lays the eggs, but you don't use the eggs. You sell the eggs to buy more of the growing brick, or you can reinvest it and keep going on the dividends returned. But eventually, you'll want to start pulling out the cash and reinvesting into the stock itself. And then you got the 17% of STRC, which is the Storm Shield, which for me this would be your dipped buying fund. And this would be if MicroStrategy has a 20% correction, and it does, so does Bitcoin and everything else, but it drops 20%, you sell some of that, which maintains a very stable level, and buy more MSTR, as it is dry powder for the bull run. Or it also says, an anchor. So really, as this keeps progressing, you have your foundation of steady cash flow, you have your aggressive cash flow, and then you have your aggressive stock. And with that, this is a 3.5 year plan. Likely, this would be a portfolio I would test and experiment with. Maybe not to these numbers, but all these numbers are scalable. So instead of 25,000, you do 2,500 and 250 a month, which is not a reasonable amount, because if it does yield the 3 to 5 million that it says on AI, obviously hypothetical numbers, I mean, even on a $2,500 investment, that would be 300 to 500,000, which would still be pretty cool. But so ideally, this would go from dollar cost averaging all the way into Q4 of 2028, and then as 2029 comes in, start divesting from this portfolio and going into stable stuff. Because as the last 3 bull runs have shown, 400 and something days, 400, let's call it 420 because it's just fun. 420 days after the halving is typically when the bull market wraps up. And I've been burned multiple times in listening to the hype of this time is different. And even this time, as we're 50% down after the top in October, everybody's saying this time is different. And realistically, it's not. Until there's bigger adoption, bigger than there already is, the 4-year cycle is still in play, in my opinion. hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll probably make a video next month on how I work my way through this portfolio on a monthly basis. Obviously not financial advice.